A very good day to you. It is time to unleash your potential. And today with me, a special guest by the name of Bradie Speller, all the way from the US of A. Bradie, welcome. It's great to have you on the show.
Doc Ant, what a pleasure, my friend. Thank you so much, man. I love you and the family, and I know things are well in South Africa. Thank you for having me today.
Fantastic. Well, Bradie, just tell us a little bit about your background. I just know there's the word Dell that just rings in my ear when I speak to you. Just give us a bit of a background.
Sure, sure. Yeah, Doc, I go back into the late 80s and the 90s. I spent some time with the M&M Mars Corporation. People are familiar with the candy bars and the pet products and all that good stuff. That's where I really started in the training and development arena and also in IT when the computers really first came out. I went to Dell in 1993 when they were a small fledgling little company that had just gone public a few years before then. And when I got there were 4,000 people worldwide, and they had just crossed over from 100 million in sales to a billion in sales in 1 year. So that
Wow.
gave us, a leading indicator of what that company's potential looked like. So for 8 years, we were definitely on what I would call a technology rocket ship. Dell shot from being an unknown computer company that was operated out of a guy's dorm room, Michael Dell's dorm room, to becoming the #1 computer corporation in the world during the 90s. It was the #1 stock on the NASDAQ for 10 years running. So
Okay.
if you put $1,000 in stock in Dell in 1990, it was worth $30,000 by the year 2000. Incredible growth.
That
Yeah.
is incredible. You're talking about
Yeah.
the rocket experience for sure. So, what was your role at Dell then, Bradie? You personally, was it just training and development?
And no, 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 it wasn't just training and development. I was actually assigned to three divisions as their starting in training and development under Dell University, but then it morphed into organizational development and change management, particularly on the IT side of the house, IT and manufacturing operations. My job was to work with the senior vice presidents of those two divisions to help develop their strategies and their plans for preparing their people for some of the technological changes that Dell was about to make. Because once you grow from a 4,000 person company to 32,000 people and 52 billion, there's a lot of systems that needed to be changed. I was assigned to an SAP implementation, which is back then was pretty huge. Order to cash, everything from the front end to the back end. IT was engaged. We had a big project team of about 200 people, and I had responsibility for making sure that the organization was ready, not only from an IT perspective, but from
Mhm.
a people perspective as well. So that's where our two worlds really try to come together.
Correct. So, just for the sake of the listeners' understanding, is that from my side, my previous value add was being chairman of the board of 6 companies and literally adding value in the arena of across financial, education, and IT myself. And obviously, uh, the reason why we're on this call tonight is because of your expertise and my expertise and us knowing each other. And my statement that actually says that if you do not combine and merge AI and human capital, your bottom line will not have the benefit. It's as easy as that. So I'm really making the statement, if you just focus on human capital, you do well, but you'll be missing out a large portion of what is required to go next level. And vice versa, if you only go onto AI and exclude the human capital side, you'd actually you're heading for a crash. So what do you make of that statement? Just to start over there.
It's funny. I was just on a podcast last week by a consulting group called Proficient, and the question that they posed was, "What if? So what?" And it says, "What if you got all this great technology and you didn't need people? So what?" All right. Well, guess what? The answer to that is, I don't care how much technology you have. I don't care if it's artificial intelligence, machine learning. It really doesn't matter. At the end of the day, Doc, there has to be a connection between the social, what I call the socio-technical systems.
Yeah.
And the social part of it is the human capital side of it. And the technical side of it is, of course, the technology, whether it's hardware or software. Human interaction between these entities is absolutely the thing that drives change and transformation in the business world. So you need both. Is a balance. It's just like the left and the right. You can't have one leaning heavily more so than the other because then you're out of kilter.
Well,
So,
you hear
mhm,
that Brady Speller and myself are in full agreement that we need
mhm.
both of these components. So what we're going to do tonight in our program, Unleashing Potential, I'm going to ask Brady to lean on the AI side because I really believe coming from an IT background, that's more your field of expertise, and mine in terms of leadership and people development more than human capital. Let's help our people understand how we literally can embrace the merging between AI and human capital. But to start it all, Brady, just in your own description, what is AI? What does it stand for and what does it represent?
Yes. Okay, Doc, good question. The acronym stands for artificial intelligence. Now, so people wonder, well, what do you mean artificial intelligence? Computers have been developed since before World War II. Computers were actually instrumental in helping to break down codes from the German troops so that we could intercept messages, right?
Hmm. Hmm.
So the technology has been around for a while, and through military grants and military budgets over the course of the last 60 to 70, maybe 80 years,
Hmm.
the United States, along with other countries, have been developing a number of different kinds of technologies to improve life on Earth. Everything from automobiles, everything from computer technology now, everything from our ability to be able to wake up to an alarm clock or to have cell phones. All of these technologies have been experimented with and developed over a long period of time. Now, it would seem to us as normal consumers that all of a sudden everything just happened, like cell phones. We are in what I would call the fourth wave of technology advancement. And let's break it down.
Okay, give me those four.
Yeah, yeah. I'm going to name the four. Okay.
Good,
The
good.
four eras within the 20th century that have accelerated when we move from the Industrial Revolution to the Information Age Revolution.
Correct.
Okay. And the first one was the advent of the personal computer. Of course, there were supercomputers in rooms with artificial floors, the big boxes, the punch cards, all that kind of stuff. That was the beginning of the computer revolution. But then it morphed into this personal computer. And I remember when I got to Dell, my very first day, I'll tell you a story.
Hmm.
One of the vice presidents did part of the orientation, and he came in the room and he said, the power of the desktop computer is going to be put into your hands within a few years. And everybody thought, how are they going to do that? Right?
Because
So,
they couldn't imagine that it can be this size. You see, to
and
them, they went from the old DOS version, and then there was advancement towards the laptop version, but nobody would have
that's right.
realized, number one, it would be in every home, and number two, in every set of hands. I mean, that was a wave that
Absolutely.
hit us. I mean, my children can't understand when I say to them, we did not have television in our home. And they go, are you kidding us? I go, well, serious.
Right.
We did not have television. And then
That's
I have
right.
to explain to them that we did not have mobile phones. And like, what are you talking? I mean, their whole
Yeah.
lives on laptops, etc. So just intervene for me here in terms of the fourth waves, as you say. I mean, from that
Right.
development, what was the next one?
So the next one then was the advent of the internet. So you had the PCs first, PC
Yep.
and the Macintosh. Then came the internet in '95 when DARPA released the technology into the world. And the internet had been worked on since World War II. But then they finally said, okay, now we can make it ready for the public. And so the internet revolution began to take place in the mid 1990s. I think it was 95, 96.
Hmm.
From the internet, now you know what the internet did. The internet opened everything up, and people were able to start communicating. Computer, laptops started getting networked, etc.
Hmm. Can I just add in
Sure, please.
when we later on speak about these four, when it comes to internet, I really believe that for future business, the businesses that where you cannot walk into a center and you don't have access to internet will be the businesses that will be falling behind because we're
That's
living in a very fast consumer world where the demand for immediate internet access is becoming real. And
right.
so I really believe I'll just put that on the shelf for later on for discussion. But I believe it is
Right.
one of those prevalent considerations. Do you have internet for your clients. Okay, so we went from PCs, we went to internet, then what happened?
That's right. And then from there, in the early part of the latter part of the actually 20th century, the cell phones
Mm-hmm.
became very, very prevalent. Okay, everybody now. First of all, you had the big phones that people used to carry around. You know, they were the hip guys, the drug dealers, etc. Had the
The
big
brick.
phones.
Do you remember
And
the brick?
the brick box. Yeah, exactly right. And then it got into the cars where you had a little antenna on the top of your hood, and you had a little thing on the dashboard. Okay,
Correct.
so that was that was a mobile phone then, and then all of a sudden it morphed into this the Apple, the iPhone, and now the Android, etc. So now we've got these powerful mechanisms of tools that have transformed the way we do everything from the time we wake up in the morning to the time we go to bed at night. These devices are very much so a part of our lives. You don't go anywhere without it now, right? So that's the third revolution, the third wave.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, if you want to make a comment about that, Doc, I got to tell you that
So far,
yeah.
that's good. I'm waiting for the last hit.
Okay, so the last hit now in the advent of social media with Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, all these other tools where people now are getting gathered into social communities. What's happened is that technology has been able to develop itself to a point where algorithms have been created to be able to do things on their own. And it's not necessarily programmers or people sitting in the background directing the information, directing the traffic. Code, computer technology, the internet, the interaction between human beings and the technology. Now we've gotten to a point where over the last 30 years, artificial intelligence has been developed, but now it's being released into the atmosphere, just like the internet was.
Correct.
Okay. And
But you
so
know what,
what we
Brady?
have,
I
yeah.
actually, for me, artificial intelligence, I actually want to keep the word artificial out of it for the best part of the discussion because it actually is intelligence. If you
It's
look at the
very,
migration and the improvement that we've had in this four waves, as you've been discussing it, you can clearly see how mankind has advanced and advanced, and this has gone faster and faster. Of course, we're going to talk about what were some of the disadvantages. Communication is one of those, but
right.
certainly it has platformed mankind through an intelligence spectrum of reaching, connecting,
Mhm,
communicating like they have
mhm.
never done before.
That's right.
So, where does that take us to?
That's right. So, Doc, that takes us to an era in the last year that's pretty much scaring a lot of people. It's frightening and it's disrupting. Again, when we have this fourth wave of disruption with technology, people are going to have to understand that, first of all, the robots are not going to take over.
Hmm.
The robots
Yeah,
will teach each other.
yeah,
Machines will teach machines, but at the end of the day, technology, just like anything else, we've been able as human beings, been able to utilize the technology for the advancement of civilization, for the advancement of people's ability to be able to provide for their families, for the advancement of the human mind in itself in terms of its ability to be able to stretch beyond boundaries that were holding us on planet Earth before. For example, now we have the ability to be able to dig deep into outer space. We have the ability to be able to connect with one another much more quickly. A message can go around the world now within seconds. And so how do we prepare humanity?
true.
Here's the big question. How do we prepare humanity for a technological partner that is thinking just like we are and advancing the rate of speed of intelligence?
It is just absolutely. I mean, when you and I heard the first time about breaking through the speed barrier called Mach 1, our
Yeah.
minds were, it was difficult to understand that there's an entry point and there's an explosion and there's an acceleration. And when it comes to human capital, if you're not bridge the two, you've got the artificial intelligence, you've got the human
Mhm.
capital, and you bring the two together. Well, I just have to look at my wife, and you have to look at your wife to realize that when it comes to human capital, they are programmed artificial intelligence. Why? Because they can remember that in the 6th of April in 1982, you said this. Okay. So And we celebrate them because, I mean, that just
That's
shows
right.
you the human factor. Because now what happens is not just the actual information that is stored, but with it comes the emotion that supports the information. Now, I believe that is going to be one of the critical elements that the artificial intelligence will never have, because yes, it can actually devise and
Mhm.
advise, but it can never bring in that true human element. And therefore, we have the merging of the two necessary for mankind to actually proceed to the next level. Would you agree?
Doc, 100% I agree. And it's the point that you make is actually interesting because the prevailing question is now,
Mhm.
how will human beings be able to control artificial intelligence, thinking that that the learning capacity of these machines are going to outpace the human capacity to be able to absorb not the information, be able to manage the technology in such a way that it doesn't cause human beings to become anachronists,
Mhm.
become an anachronism. In other words, human beings are no longer needed. I beg to differ.
Yeah,
I beg to differ. And I think you and I are on this same boat.
true.
Even though I love the technology side of it, I know that the application of these tools is impossible without the human element.
Correct. However, there is something that I now have seen that certainly has boggled my mind, and that is that the same artificial intelligence with regular input of the same person, they can literally start reading the way or the method or the style that this individual is communicating. I take Chat GPT. It is a phenomenal aid in today's age in terms of
Perfect
helping
example.
you uh,
Mhm.
with any form of a document, writing of documents, etc., research. It really is beyond. I mean, I just said thank you the other day. I was busy using ChatGPT and I said, thank you so much. The dude came back to me, only a pleasure. And I thought, wow. And I thought,
You-
we have to acknowledge there is a measure of cloning that is happening, which obviously we know is learning that is
Mhm.
transpiring, but it's scary in terms of how fast it's developing and how excellent that it is.
Yeah, and Doc, you use the example of Chat GPT, which was the big boom last year when it hit. Yeah, what I think near the end of 22, going into 23,
True.
when it hit, it freaked everybody out. People are trying to figure out how to use it, what it all does, et cetera, et cetera. Now you've got Gemini, which is the Google platform. But here's the thing that's very, very interesting. It's the acceleration of companies that are now developing applications utilizing artificial intelligence
True.
to solve business and human workforce problems. Problems that existed for a long time where we didn't have the tools or the technology to figure out how do we do things. For example, supply chain.
Yes.
Supply chain is now developing tools within utilizing artificial intelligence applications that can go out to numerous customers and be able to see some of the kinks and some of the problems within the system and be able to predict where you're going to have difficulties with the shipment of goods back and forth. That's just one example.
Correct.
I've participated in a rollout of supply chain orchestration that has a backbone of artificial intelligence that really helps companies see more of what they have available to them so that they can solve some of their supply chain issues.
And part of that would be the element of project management that all of a sudden becomes so
Mhm.
much easier because you now have a system induced controlling mechanism, whereas you have milestones. But once you put in the vision, the mission, and the objectives, you put in your milestones, it actually helps you to monitor your, uh, can I say, operational side so much more effectively. And if it's properly programmed to come in and say and ask you the right questions for you to consider, is what I've done and completed and um, executed in the way that I wanted to, and then it takes you to the next project. So it's just amazing how artificial intelligence is truly making the workplace a better place and more effective. And as you say, but there comes this one point of juncture of what about human capital? Can it interpret emotion? Can it interpret culture? Because you and I know
Mhm.
that the moment we walk into the workplace, company culture is something that happens between people with different
That's
and
right.
various backgrounds. Whereas I think it will take the computer, they might be able to tell you the four different kinds of generations. They can say that you had the industrial age, you went into the baby boomers, you went into the Gen X, you went into Gen Z. They'll be able to
Mm.
tell you the information, but intricate um, passing through from the one to the other one with the crossover layers, I believe it's the human element of experience that plays
Mhm.
a role there. And because of experience is being fed into the intelligence, we are starting to get a match of information that is very, 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 very useful.
Doc, that is an insightful point that you just made. And the comment that I would make to that is it's just like generational learning.
Hmm.
Okay. Like you mentioned the various generations and what the baby boomers now have been able to pass on to the millennials or the Gen Xers, and then Gen X passed on to millennials, millennials passing on to Gen Z. You know, the generations continue to grow from a technological savviness perspective because they're used to having these tools and technologies at their disposal, right? But what's happening is also there's a level of dependency
Mm,
that's taken place that we got to be careful of. And let me just speak to that issue. We have to be careful that critical thinking skills from a human capital perspective don't get lost in the process
true.
as we lean on these tools to think more for us, to give us more information, to give us faster access to questions that we may have and solutions, right? So what it does is one of the things that we're talking about here in the United States is around the school systems and how much students will be able to utilize Chat GPT and Gemini to do homework,
Correct. But
to
then
do
again, they will have tools that you and I never had as children. So
ahead. That's
that's why they are much faster. That's why the average child's time that they would spend on information technology is a way different picture. I mean, for you and I, it was only used when we started communicating. You only went to go and write an email when you wanted to send somebody a message. I mean, take it back to the time when we used to have ships that would actually take a letter from one country to the next country. It took 3 months for you to ask a
that's right.
question and to get an answer.
That's right.
Whereas now it is instantaneous. So they've got
Instantaneous.
tools at their disposal, which you and I actually did not have. And it's just, we have to find a way to roll with it. You know, as parents, we're always fighting with the kids are having too much screen time. But the
Yeah.
thing is, it's how they live their lives. If you try and contain it to what we used to have in our exposure, we do
Yeah.
understand there's a healthy balance between life out there in nature and health in terms of building your information technology side. But I think we need to understand that going forward, Gen Z, different kettle of fish. It's the way they
Yeah.
live.
That's
That's why
right.
they are different.
That's right. No, that's absolutely right. And can you imagine what it's going to be like 30 years, 50 years from now? You know, the thing about it though is, and again, I'm going to go back to the analogy of the fact that the reliance upon the technology, which could potentially decrease the level of critical thinking of the human being
Yeah,
itself, could be at risk if we're not instilling tests or cognitive methodologies
correct.
within the artificial intelligence that force people to not only just ask the question, but also to challenge the information that's coming back to them.
I
Okay,
think
for example,
analytics is going to play a vital part in terms of what
absolutely.
is happening and what has happened, and then obviously projection as to what could happen. Because you speak about
That's right.
critical thinking. Now, as a businessman, having worked with CEOs and C level, I found one of the missing factors mostly has been strategic. The
Mhm.
strategic element of how do I position my company in the next 5, 10, 15, 20 years to actually still be around? Because 90% of companies are gone before 5 years are over. Why? They lack the strategic element because of lack of resources and not knowing how to purpose money to establish their financial acumen in a sense. So that's what I
Mhm.
found. So I wonder, and I'd love to know your opinion. Um, what do you think is going to happen with, if you look at the critical thinking that we've spoken about versus strategic thinking? What do you think the future could embrace or hold?
As far as strategy goes and strategic thinking, I think the tools will help organizations to build strategic roadmaps and
Mm,
strategic plans based on the inputs from the executive suite, right? So modeling, analytical modeling, predictive analysis, tools that are built within the technology and within particularly within AI and ML should be able to provide them if they're asking the right questions and putting in the right data, then they should be able to get information back that helps them to shape a strategic way forward, particularly from a predictive perspective in terms of taking a look out down the road. Where is the industry going to be 4 or 5 years from now? Because typically companies, the CEOs are on a quarterly schedule,
yeah,
especially if they're a publicly traded corporation. They've got to report to Wall Street every 3 months, right? And so what happens is the short-term thinking becomes a predominant um, modality versus countries like China, for example, which are thinking longer term, 20, 30 years.
true.
But our ability to be able to utilize these technologies to build strategic roadmaps is going to rely on inquisitive, curious, and open-minded executives to
Correct.
be able to sit in a room and say, we don't know all the answers, instead of walking out and thinking that you do know all the answers because you don't.
You'll come second. You definitely will come second. But you see, there is one thing that I have noticed, and that is that if you in the legal business, one of the strongest positioning of any legal positioning would be when they come to examples. In the case of Apple P versus scones, the following happened. This was the problem. This is the decision, and therefore many lawyers will refer to case by case. And the moment they have a
Mhm,
few examples of where in that entity the judge awarded this way, that
mhm,
that balance of good record tracking or track record of information and cases that actually added value to society, I believe,
mhm.
in a sense, the computers work in the same way. They will be able to bring examples and examples to the fore that will assist with better strategic visioneering because of
Yep.
great examples of wins. They will have the following 20 were lost cases for the following reasons, but the following 10 were winners because of, and here's the difference between the two. I think that of in itself is a lesson within a lesson, which the artificial intelligence seems to be able to do, which we did not have because we used to have to bring in a consultant for that
That's right.
information.
That's right. We had to bring in the McKinseys, the Accentures, the Deloittes, and all those folks who had expertise around a specific niche of information. And that's why they would bring a whole team into a company to sit down and take a look at what your strategy is around marketing, what your strategy is about revenue growth, what your strategy is for expansion, et cetera, et cetera. So I agree with you. I think the technology is going to allow um, companies to be able to predict better where their market opportunities are going to be able to do predictive analysis, they'll be able to input a lot of information, get a lot of information out.
Mhm.
But the thing is, the decision making is still going to come down to guess who?
There you go. The,
That's
the human person, because there's always an
right.
element of what a computer cannot see, because the
Mhm,
human can look at the history, can look at wins, can look at losses, and can look at new trends, because trends of the past, trends of the future always come into the equation, but it takes the human mind and deliberation to come to a consensus or to a possible solution that could change it. I never would have thought that one of the statements that I have made 5 years ago that I built my entire coaching curriculum on was The answer is in the question. I never ever would have thought how that would become the way forward for artificial intelligence. Because
Mm,
today it is your ability, because the answer is in the question, is your ability to ask the right question that's going to
that's right.
get you the right information. It's scary. You know, Brady, I never would have thought I was using that in terms of human capital and relationships of uh, people to business. But now
Mhm.
I know that if you have the ability to ask the right question, boy, you get the right answers in terms of surveys, analytical, it changes the game.
That's right. And so, Doc, to that very, very point, you bring up a very interesting point because one of the things that in my corporate experience over the last 5 years,
Mhm.
the big push within the human capital development learning process within major corporations has been data,
Mhm.
analytics, the ability to be able to tell a story with data.
True.
Most people within an organization, unless you're IT or you're a business analyst, you don't necessarily look at the big picture of all the data that sits in front of you. Sometimes you want to zero in on a micro problem and come up with a micro solution that doesn't add value to the big picture.
True.
So what's happening is they're talking about data literacy, data fluency, data and analytics, and understanding how to utilize or how to read big data and be able to internalize that data to be able to make decisions about the business and how you go forward. But the only way you do that is by teaching people how to read the data, how to understand it, and then how to interpret it and tell a story behind it so that you can make proper decisions fast.
Well, let's make that practical. You and I spoke early on about how 90% of small businesses, SMEs, small medium enterprises,
Mhm.
actually do not make it beyond 5 years. 90% of them,
That's right.
because of their cash flow, which becomes a problem.
Mhm.
Therefore, I really, really hope that the new artificial intelligence will help us and become mini actuaries to purpose money, to purpose cash flow, to purpose budgets in such a way and reverse engineer it that the normal SME now has a calculative tool that says if you don't have the following in place, you most probably are not going to see the end in the tunnel. You want to see light in the end of the tunnel. And I really believe that could be a change in the game because there's always been where SME entrepreneurs are so short sighted, they're going for immediate results. But the thing
Mhm.
is, the strategic thrust and the fact that it actually has to be reverse engineered becomes the possible solution to businesses that go beyond the 5 year mark. That is worldwide, by the way, not just South Africa, it is America as well.
Wow, that's right. That's true. That is true, Doc. So think about it from that thinking about it from that perspective. Yeah. How many more small business, small medium enterprises, SMEs, will be able to survive the 5 year to 3 to 5 year demise by utilizing tools and technologies that are now available to them, whether it's ChatGPT, whether it's Gemini, whether it's some other, some other tool that's out there. Um, and how much more of a stronger economy can we build?
Absolutely.
Connecting connecting small businesses with a global marketplace, right? So with the advent of the computer and the technology and artificial intelligence, if you have a good idea, you should be able to not only bring that idea to fruition, but you should be able to sustain your business and be able to grow it to become a lifelong enterprise that even lasts beyond the founders.
True.
But until we as small business owners, for example, understand the tools that are available to us instead of us trying to figure everything out for ourselves, okay? I fear that many of these businesses and many of these jobs, even within corporate America, will go away and people will be displaced, but then they're going to have to figure out what other skill sets do I need to learn in order to survive. And that's
Correct.
the big, yeah.
Because you see, the computer cannot replace that learning ability. It
That's
basically
right.
can trace, it basically can mirror. But the creative side is that only the side that the creator of the world has put into the human being. Point in case, how come the human being cognitively can think and reason, but an animal cannot? And therefore, people now have to say, where did they position? It's animal, it's human being. Where do they position artificial intelligence? Most people will do this wrong
Yeah. Wrong.
because
Absolutely.
the creator has still given the human the ability to create the artificial intelligence.
That's
So
right.
going
That's
forward,
right.
there might be places, but it will never overtake that which is innate, grown from a creative point of view, where
Hmm.
mankind has got the ability to create when they speak, when they act, when they do. And I think that is just gives it the edge where, if I now look at the two, AI, which I see as the system side of things, and the human capital, which I see the
Hmm.
skill side of things. If you accelerate the skill, you accelerate the use of system, and you marry those two, boy, you're destined for a great future. I believe that's
Yeah.
where the success lies.
And Doc, I'm going to have to agree with you 100% on that because I believe that the solution to some of the world problems, whether it's climate change, whether it's food security, insecurity, whether it's poverty, whether it's conflict, all of these things that are causing strife in the world, we have this innate ability from the creator who downloaded all of the intelligence into this thing called the 6 inches of brain matter
True.
to be able to create anything out of nothing.
That's right.
Everything is on the earth that's in the earth, and we have the ability to be able to use these tools use these things that have been given to us so that we can continue to advance society so that we can, how do you say, be fruitful and multiply.
Absolutely.
Right?
But Brady,
Right.
seeing that we're running out of time, I'd like to wrap up in terms of, but what do
Sure.
we encounter as possible dangers of the future? When it comes to risk mitigation, I think security becomes one of the key issues and elements. For
Uh,
instance, when you and I have a discussion, we're sitting in a restaurant, we're having a soda, and all of a sudden you and I speak about an entity travel, and we haven't spoken about that for 2, 3 years. And all of a sudden, it doesn't take 45 minutes and you start getting adverts on travel being sent to your mobile. I mean, that is universal. So there's an artificial intelligence that is listening to what is happening in the world and is feeding you in the area where you want to be fed. Now, that for me could be a security issue, but it is a reality. Can you just talk a little bit? You've got the experience from the systems and information technology side of that reality. It's not, I'm not dreaming. It's really happening, right?
it's happening. It is happening, and it's happening hard and fast. Okay. So cybersecurity, of course, is probably one of the fastest growing sectors within the IT industry. It is. There's another part to this too that's beyond just the cybersecurity. It's the actual application of these devices, and once they're turned on, that device's ability to be able to hear, to listen, to pick up frequencies, and to pick up information of discussions that are happening around it, not
True,
necessarily through it.
true.
Perfect example. My wife and I share the same network, internet network in the home, just like you do.
Hmm.
I go Google something around vacation. Right? I Google it. The next thing I know, I'm getting a ton of ads around vacation stuff.
Correct.
Now, she's on a completely, she's on the 5G band. I'm on the 2.4 band, but guess what's happening? Now she's getting pop-ups. And then the scary one, here's the real scary one. Amazon has this thing called Alexa.
That's right.
And in my home, we have Alexas in every room. And once you say that word, she picks up and she starts listening.
She does.
The fact of the matter is that sometimes when you don't even mention the word, this thing is listening to the conversations that are going on. And then will jump in the middle of a conversation and ask you, do you want to know more about this or this or this or that? And we're like, whoa, 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 whoa. Hold up, wait a minute. We didn't ask you to get involved. But you got to remember,
It's picking up the
these
trend.
devices
It's
is
picking up the trend. Correct.
it's picking up the trend, it's picking up the thoughts, it's picking up your frequencies, your voice, all that stuff. So that's the scary part. That's the scary side of it. Firewalls, no matter what kind of firewalls you build out, no matter how much security you put into it, at the end of the day, we have to accept there's going to be a certain amount of invasion of privacy, no matter what we try to do.
Correct. And obviously, one of the biggest cybercrime uh, threats of the new age would be the security of money. Because as we now, we don't just only have fiat currency, but we also have cryptocurrency. And therefore, when we speak about the blockchain, it's sure, it's secure, it's transactions from A to B to Z, and it actually measures every single thing. Because on the blockchain, you can never short circuit. However,
right.
there definitely is the danger of money being blocked by those who are driving the systems. That becomes a big threat and a big scare. It scares me because I know so many good common projects in the world where monies arrive at the right level, it gets approved at the various reserve banks, but the moment that money is sent and transmitted, it gets blocked and it gets scooped.
That's
Now,
right.
that is something that I would love to actually want you to do some research on. I'd love to bring you on as a guest again. And I want you to come and talk to my people in terms of unleashing potential, how we become, number one, I'd say sensitized to the reality of what is happening with moving money in bulk matter. Because when it comes to big money, I mean, corruption is one of the biggest threats of the world, because that is the one thing that an AI does not think of, but the human mind thinks of at all times. AI can pick up patterns, but the human mind is where the criminality has come in, because people are lazy. Greed, as it's been discussed from the man that created us, is greed killed. This is literally what happens. So I'd like you to do a little bit of research in that area. With your permission, I'd like to get you on again, and let's break it open a bit and dream about how can we help and warn people in terms of the security around money, the security around their personal lives, and how literally, because both you and I agree, it's the merging of both AI and human capital that brings the resolution towards getting in business profit, bottom line results improved, but in human capital to get relationships to go next level. Would you agree?
Absolutely. Doc, I agree 100%. And I'm going to end it with this note. This morning, I was reading an article, $1.6 billion lost within the cryptos world, money being siphoned off through crypto crime. So we're going to leave it there, okay?
We can leave it. But so
that leads us into our next conversation.
We're coming back. And Bradie, I'd like us maybe in 2 weeks' time, if we can take this up again, because obviously my listeners now know that you are knowledgeable on your subject. You know what you're talking about, you've got corporate experience. And I just think that we need to understand that the part of consultants and advising and coaching always is there's people who've been there before you actually even arrive. In your case, you've got years of experience. I want to tell you, my listeners are so grateful for your inputs tonight, because we learned a lot. And I'm looking forward to spending time with you again. And I want to thank you for your contribution. What's your one last statement that you just want to tell people when you look at AI and human capital from your side?
From my side, we have to, it's a marriage. It's a covenant relationship that has to be developed, okay? And we have to be able to trust the tools that we've got. And we also have to trust the fact that we as human beings are the ultimate arbiter when it comes to this, the application of these tools and technologies. We've been given the God-given right to be able to manifest everything within the earth that we know about. I say that we have these tools, let's use them to the benefit of humankind. That's what we have to do.
Well, you know what, Bradie, with that statement, I'm not going to try and improve on that at all. I'm just going to say thank you so much. I have had a lot of fun, and we're talking about a new marriage that is necessary. And boy,
Mhm.
I believe in the covenant of marriage, and so do you. So, looking forward to see you next time. Bradie Speller from me, Doc Ant. It was wonderful having you on the show. And remember, let's unleash our potential as we learn every day, we lead ourselves, and we inspire the world. Take care.
Right. Thank you, Doc.